Okay. What was it like in your area during this time?
Well, I'll go like during junior high and high school. I'll go to that. During that time, it was a time of resurgent patriotism. It was after the Vietnam War was over, and there was a real bullishness or desire to in our community to stand up to the Russians and not to take their garbage. I remember when the Korean airliner was shot down by the Soviets in 1983. There was pro-American protest, something you hardly ever see today. Much more likely to see flag stickers and stuff like that. Ronald Reagan was going to be reelected the next year. So there was a kind of a rediscovered patriotism and excitement, even though there was a concern, but a readiness to stand up.
What was your experience with the Cold War? How do you know so much about it?
Well, it starts by my dad. Before I was born, in 1961, my dad was in the Army, and it was during the Berlin Wall crisis. And he was about to be shipped to Berlin. He was stationed at Fort Ord in California, and he was ready to go off to Berlin. And the whole family's like, "Oh my gosh!" Because is this nuclear? Are we coming down to nuclear warfare? Because the Russians were standing up saying, "We want all of Berlin. We want East Germany to have all that." And President Kennedy, Democratic president, was saying, "No, we're gonna, we want peace, but I want the military the army to increase to 1 million." They're bringing all these people in, and so I mean the stories of this are clear. My dad was walking to get on the airplane to go to Berlin, and they pulled him, the only soldier from all the people getting on the plane. They pulled him out and said, "No, you're a teacher. We need you here." And at the last moment, he was pulled from going to Berlin. And so I remember those stories as a kid. How dad, who knows what would happen with dad and mom and all that stuff, whether that ever would have happened. So there was this interest in the Cold War that started there, and then developing an interest in serving my country and being in the military, and the fear of potential war that goes along with that, and my interest in history just made me always kind of pay attention. And then in college, I majored in history, and I did some papers and stuff like that on it. So I was following it pretty closely. I was really concerned about the issue of freedom most of all, though. I hate tyranny. I hate the idea that even people I disagree with don't have the freedom to disagree with me. And I saw the Soviets as and the Soviet bloc as being the biggest threat to that, to freedom. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you know all of it was going on?
Like the source of information.
Yeah.
So it was newspaper, TV. I didn't trust magazines quite as much, but some magazines, more U.S. News and World Report than Time at the time. Those were the big magazines, and then a lot of family discussions. I mean, like every weekend, like grandparents and parents, we were always talking politics, always.
Were you afraid?
Yeah, I wasn't. I don't think I was. I wasn't thinking I was afraid of them winning, but I was afraid of the concept of evil. I know there's evil in the world, and studying history, I've seen things evil done. I've seen Stalin, with the Russians. You go back to Hitler, all kinds of totalitarian government, and thinking about going to the military and wanting to serve. Yeah, I realized, serving your country, that might result in death. So yeah, there was some fear.
I guess you kind of already answered this, but did your parents tell you a lot about it, or was it mostly you?
Both. It was like, yeah, they would tell me about it, but I'd also ask them, and then I would go read and talk to people. I felt I needed to understand to be able to serve my country. Yeah.
Did you know anyone other than your dad that was involved in it?
Yeah, I mean, one of my dad's close friends served on the USS Los Angeles, and that was the ship, that heavy cruiser, that was the first to reach the Taiwan Strait when the Red Chinese were trying to, they started bombarding Taiwan because they wanted to make Taiwan part of China, and the USS Los Angeles was the first ship by itself that just sailed into the strait and stand. I mean, talk about scary. And one of my dad's buddies served on the USS Los Angeles, and I actually have. He had quite a collection of items from the USS Los Angeles, and I actually run a museum now where we actually have a display on the USS Los Angeles, and he was on that ship. So I've studied that a lot. Yeah.
What was the biggest thing you remember happening from this time period?
There's probably two. The one would be, because in childhood there's things that just like they hit you. You don't necessarily have a great comprehension, but I remember people coming home from Vietnam, and I remember our neighbor who had served in the Army. He was an Army officer coming home moving in with his hippie brother, and I don't say that insultingly, but he had long hair, he was in the army, and he brought his kids there, and I remember becoming friends. All my friends were white, Jewish, that was it, you know, and all of a sudden I had Vietnamese friends. I mean, that just sticks with me. All of a sudden my world just changed. All of a sudden I'm talking with people who speak another language and who come here for freedom, and that changed. The second thing was when the Korean airliner was shot down. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, these guys, because a Korean airliner, Flight 7, got into a little bit of Russian airspace, Russian jets shot it out of the sky. A commercial airliner with civilians. And I went to school the next day with a Russian flag, and I burned it in the quad. With the entire student body out there having a great time cheering it on, which I can't imagine happening today.
Did any events happen around where you lived?
Probably the not in terms of like protest or war or anything. I mean, I lived by this Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station when I was little, so I remember my mom telling me that these bunker silos across from us had nuclear weapons in them, and she said, don't worry, if there's a nuclear war, we're the first to go because the Russians have targeted this spot because it stores nuclear weapons, so we're out of here. And then I remember, of course, the Vietnamese refugees coming to the city next to us, Westminster, and settling in the thousands and creating what's today Little Saigon. Yeah, I remember the creation of Little Saigon, that's wild.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.